When a completely new idea comes around, predictably there is misunderstanding and apprehension. The more unique and original the idea, the greater is the reluctance to see it for what it is and recognize its potential. Call it the shock of the new. As a populist candidate, you've got everything stacked against you. Funding your campaign is next to impossible. Both major parties promote a neoliberal agenda, viewing populist-progressive initiatives at best with suspicion, at worst with hostility and rejection. We saw how the faux progressive Democratic Party destroyed the campaign of Bernie Sanders. Then there's the media, owned by a handful of major corporations and doing the bidding of the rich and powerful ruling elite, which either marginalizes and mocks someone like yourself or ignores you altogether, making it all the more difficult to get proper exposure for your candidacy and a fair hearing for your ideas. Often progressive ideas themselves are the brunt of jokes in the three-ring circus that campaigning for office has become, objects of derision, and the message bearers subjected to malignant attacks and mockery. Look at the way Ralph Nader was constantly derided as a curmudgeon, a cranky old eccentric. But all is not lost, because there's one thing you have as a populist candidate which no amount of Orwellian spin or cheap vilification can deter. There's something no amount of vaporous campaign rhetoric, no catalog of empty campaign promises, no campaign chest filled with the legal bribes of deep-pocketed donors can deny. Nothing your opponents can say or do can erase this simple, powerful, and we believe decisive fact. You have the people on your side. If you are a true populist progressive, you have, depending on the specific issue, between 62% and 80% of the voting public in your corner, wanting real change, wanting someone to fight their fight, thus ready to support you. The challenge in this day and age of electoral campaigns, which run into the millions of dollars, is letting the voters know, as a true people's candidate, who you are and what you stand for. And not just letting them know, getting them to trust and believe in you, invest their faith in you, know in their hearts and minds that you are for real, that you are the only candidate with the honesty, integrity, transparency, commitment to go to Washington, D.C. and faithfully represent their interests, their desires, their vision for the America they want for themselves, their neighbors, their communities. The corollary to that is alerting voters how they're being manipulated and conned by a rigged system, that is, exposing your opponents as the smooth-talking frauds that they are. This sounds harsh, but it's really not. Congress is now filled with professional politicians who will say anything to get elected. They have teams of speechwriters, spin doctors, and psychologists putting together pleasant-sounding, hypnotic speeches and lovely TV ads. They have image consultants and public relations specialists who know how to put lipstick on a pig and make it look like a beauty pageant contestant. The competition is tough, ruthless, merciless, sometimes sociopathic. This is why we developed the CFAR, the Contract for American Renewal. It is your direct link to voters. It is your bond, your shared commitment to create an America that works for everyone, not just the rich and powerful. It's how you can take truth, honesty, integrity, transparency, accountability, and turn them into a powerful weapon to decisively defeat the big money, manipulation, hypocrisy, and outright deception which have become pandemic in our current political environment. Let's get into what the CFAR is, why and how it's the best mechanism you will find anywhere to make your campaign an unqualified success and send you on your way to Washington, D.C. We're talking to you, every single populist progressive candidate out there running for either the Senate or the House of Representatives in the November 2018 election, who's serious about winning. Let's get started. As you know, we're up against a brutal, well-organized, well-funded, ruthless enemy. The establishment, the plutocracy which now owns and controls both major parties, has all of the money, they have the media in their pockets, they marginalize dissenting opinion, They have all but crushed the minor parties, and any renegade candidate not towing the establishment line is ignored, often even vilified and demonized. There's really only one way to fight this. We must unify across the entire populist-progressive front in every single district and state and nationally assemble an enormous block of voters to challenge the manipulative and deceptive messaging, the cynical use of money, power, and political machinery which both major parties wield to isolate and destroy populist-progressive campaigns by good, decent people like you. The good news is that we have huge majorities of citizens agreeing with you as a populist progressive on a whole host of issues. Granted, you wouldn't know that from watching the news, but it's true. It's an indisputable fact. We already have the voting public on our side on key issues. We're talking percentages of 62% to 80% agreement. What the establishment candidates do to keep getting elected is confuse the public with a lot of babble and empty promises. In a nutshell, we've come up with a bulletproof way to unconfuse everyday Americans. We've come up with a device which, used properly, will make you, the populist progressive candidate, look like a hero, a savior. And it will expose your establishment opponents as the frauds, hypocrites, and phonies they really are. The voting public will run the other way. The device I'm talking about is the CFAR. That stands for Contract for American Renewal. Yes, it's a contract, but before you panic, let's be clear exactly what this contract is designed to do. First, it's not there to restrict, regulate, or police you. It's designed to discredit and defeat your opponents. It's an electoral strategy, not a legal strategy. You have to understand and remain clear about this. While you will be signing the contract, your opponents won't. They literally can't sign it. In the eyes of the voters, because you're willing to give a firm commitment in writing, guaranteeing that you will serve them faithfully, honestly, transparently, and your opponents can only hem and haw and spew out more slogans and sound bites, you will not just get the attention of voters, they'll know with absolute certainty that you are serious and that you are willing to lay it all out on the line and prove to them beyond a shadow of doubt that you are worthy of their trust and thus deserve their votes. Let's get into the details. The CFAR requires what you will be doing anyway if you're running as a populist progressive candidate. What appears on the contract is what you already stand for, why we assume you're running for office as an outsider. It includes the kinds of things that any populist progressive worthy of calling themselves that wants to fight for on behalf of the majority of citizens. Look at these poll numbers. Are you with the voters on these issues? These are the major crises of our times. This is what people care about, not Trump's tweets or whether Melania uses henna to streak her hair. The contract perfectly parallels the polls. Therefore, the contract represents what the vast majority of everyday citizens in this country want done. The exact things which never get done with our current Congress of ruling class puppets. So we have a great start here. Very popular initiatives across the entire nation. At the same time, we realize there are variations in each voting jurisdiction, so the contract is not written in stone. It's flexible, designed to meet your needs. You may decide to use the CFAR as written, or you may want to tweak it, drop some items that are not crucial to your future constituents, and maybe feature a different populist-progressive initiative that's not listed here. Let me give you an example. Let's say there are a lot of underwater home mortgages in this district. This not only affects those homeowners, but it's driving the property values down across the region. You might consider including in your CFAR a mortgage relief initiative. Here's another example. A very recent poll just indicated that nationally the support for single-payer health care is around 58%. As this controversy builds, this will probably keep going up. But let's say we find that this district has already had a lot of problems with insurance companies, or people are finding a poor range of choices for health coverage, and they're really upset about it. Then that's an item which, based on your own sensitivities to your constituents' needs, you might want to put in your CFAR for the voters here. Understand that in the end, the only items that you have in your CFAR are those which make sense for your campaign and which you can wholeheartedly commit to when you go to Washington, D.C. Having said that, signing your personalized version of the CFAR should be a no-brainer. The initiatives in your CFAR are the items you've decided are the centerpieces in your campaign and have determined will be decisive in defeating your opponent. Okay, you're signing this as a legally binding contract. That's what the contract says. That means you are signing it with every intention of honoring it to the letter. This might sound ominous to you. I respect your concerns, but fulfilling your obligations under the contract couldn't possibly be simpler. The contract says you will introduce, sponsor, or co-sponsor and support legislation for those items in the contract. That's it. Go to Congress, draft legislation, and make every effort to get it on the legislative agenda within 180 days of taking office. Then if it comes up exclusively for a vote, you vote for it. What does exclusively mean? It means if they attach an amendment to kill all the penguins in Antarctica or to require everyone to wear polka dot pants on Thursday, you don't vote for it. If it comes up as a standalone bill, you vote for it. You also publicly and on the floor of Congress promote it. That's it. If you can't handle that, you probably shouldn't be running for office. It's the basic job description for a legislator. So how do you decide what to include in your CFAR? This is a critical decision and we're here to help you. But the short answer is you should choose those initiatives which are decisive in making you look good and your opponents look bad. Meaning you want issues which are popular right here in this district with the voters, which are not supported by your opponents. The idea is to make sure they will not be able to sign this contract. That way the voters will see, if they select you, these great things will get done. But if they vote for your opponent, they can expect more of the same excuses, chuck and jive, mumbo-jumbo, and none of the things you've included in your CFAR will get through Congress. Remember, there's a good reason your opponents can't sign the CFAR. That's because if they sign a contract guaranteeing all these wonderful things for the voters, they'll lose their campaign donations from fat cat donors, and they'll lose the support of whichever major party they belong to. Both parties support basically a conservative, centrist, regressive agenda. They might talk a good story, but as you well know, neither major party walks the walk. Listen, we understand this is an important decision for you to make. It's important to us as well because the sooner we can get candidates like yourself on board, the sooner we can organize both our local and national campaigns around the CFAR and get started putting together a solid, populist-progressive Congress. This is a bulletproof plan for winning elections and getting good people like yourself into Congress. The strategy has been thoroughly thought through, and I'd be surprised if there were any real obstacles to you yourself playing a critical role in our attempt to save our democracy. But we recognize this is coming out of nowhere. It's completely unique. Nothing like this has ever been tried. So you're going to want to have everything on the table, out in the open, so you're comfortable with it. So study it, ask questions, let's work together. Let me make an important point. Yes, it's coming out of nowhere. It's completely unique. Nothing like this has ever been tried. And that's precisely why it's going to work. It's going to catch the establishment completely flat-footed. It's doing something they forgot about and haven't tried for decades, being upfront and straightforward with the public and guaranteeing voters honest and genuine service. The major parties will be scratching their heads saying, "Now why didn't we think of that?" Recognize that the only way this strategy will work is if we implement it across the nation in all 50 states and all 435 congressional districts, which is exactly what we're going to do. We will have a candidate in all 33 Senate races and candidates in all 435 congressional districts, every one of whom have signed a CFAR. We have an entire network of organizations which are now being organized and networked to work tirelessly for those candidates. We're dead serious about this and have one simple goal: make sure every single populist-progressive candidate wins their election. We're talking about a complete takeover of Congress. Anything less than that, and you can kiss American democracy goodbye forever. The rich will keep getting richer. The everyday citizen will become serfs. The wars will keep going until our once great nation is bankrupt and has collapsed. The way we see it is we all have to stick together or none of us will survive. We believe, no, we know, that by unifying our forces, the populist progressive forces which have been shoved aside and beaten down now for decades, we can win this. The CFAR puts us all on the same page, unifies us and the voting public into an unstoppable juggernaut. The CFAR demonstrates to the public that there are good, decent candidates available who are unquestionably, unambiguously committed to honest, transparent, loyal service. We'll crush the establishment candidates at the polls, and Americans will get a government that works for all Americans, not just the rich and powerful. Let me be blunt. If you don't sign the contract, you'll probably lose. Therefore, we're forced to look for another candidate who will sign the contract, a candidate who has an infinitely better chance of winning. We'll put all of our time, energy, and resources behind that candidate. It's nothing personal. It's the only way this thing will work. The contract is your friend, not your enemy. In fact, it's the best friend and ally you could possibly have, given the way the game is stacked against you. This may be hard for you to accept, but it's the truth. I know this is a lot to think about. I want you to succeed. Regardless of your decision, thanks for your hard work on behalf of progressive causes.